So, good evening to everyone here in the auditorium and those watching online. Welcome to the next public lecture on our Studia Generalia lecture series on security and intelligence. My name is Dominic Saari and I work as a university teacher in the master's program Security and Strategic Analysis. Our security environment is ever-changing and deteriorating as we speak. Disinformation and misinformation are recognized both by the World Economic Forum and the United Nations as grave threats to world security. Thus, the speaker for today could not be more relevant. I have the honor to present today's lecturer. Eva Klusova is a narrative security researcher and doctoral candidate at the Charles University in Prague, Czech Republic. One can safely say that she is an expert on Russian propaganda and her research thus focuses on protecting societies from digital propaganda, especially Russian digital propaganda. Before I give the microphone and the floor to you, I would like to remind our audience here that if we have time for some questions after your lecture, please, before you ask questions, raise your hand so I can give you the microphone so the people online can also hear your questions. And obviously, please ask the questions in English. Without further ado, Eva, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much and good evening. I'm so happy that so many of you arrived to see kind of disturbing content. I have two disclaimers for you. Some of the content you will see today are pure propaganda against minorities, against nations. It's disturbing, sorry for that, but it should show you the reality of online world. Second disclaimer, I just found out yesterday that you have very strict GDPR towards showing the private profiles on Facebook from individuals. So just to let you know, today all the profiles I'll show are fake profiles. And I do believe that fake Russian trolls are not protected by European GDPR Act. So I'm not showing personal information because those individuals do not exist. They are fake profile spreading Russia propaganda. And I'm also happy for myself as a researcher and as a public figure in Czech Republic that finally I can talk about Russian influence as a Russian influence. 2021 I was not allowed because it was not enough diplomatic. I had to say disinformation campaigns of the foreign actors, never mentioning Russia. But after the invasion fully scale invasion to Ukraine, we just stopped to be diplomatic towards Russia and call things as they are. So today I will try to explain some phenomena we are facing in Central Europe. It's full-scale Russian propaganda. Our children, our young adults are flooded by Russia propaganda online via TikTok, via Facebook, via Instagram, mostly on reels and short format videos. And it's not really about the disinformation anymore because there are no informations. It's just like that disgusting feeling we are having, this kind of framing we are feeling, the triggers that triggering our vulnerabilities, our history, our identity. And this is what I want to talk about because we have to switch the view we are having about the Russian influence in our information space and think how we can tackle it. And Russians, they're clever because they knew that we will understand the tactics. So they started to introduce the narrative, which is framing every aim to control the information space as censorship. So whenever we want to regulate the social networks in order to mitigate the radicalization or polarization in a society or Russian influence towards societies, we are labeled as censors. And this is quite dangerous because then we don't have political will to tackle this problem, and you'll see what problem I'm talking about. Why me in Finland? You know, Czechs, they love Finns because we have that kind of feeling that we have shared legacy. Why the shared legacy? I call it the ex-smokers of the East, yeah? We inherited this kind of urgency and foresight. We have this kind of transgenerational experience with Russia. We know how it was. We have this maybe family histories, fighting with Russia or Soviet Union. On a picture, you see actually a picture of house of my grandmother being bombed by Soviet Liberation Army in the end of the Second World War. So we have kind of two liberations in Czech Republic by Soviet Army, one in 1945 when they were bombing and raping civilians, and a second one in 1968 when they've been liberating our liberational movement and imposing a more tough communism in the Czech Republic via Warsaw Pact army. And it's actually a great honor to be here just 2 days after this horrible anniversary in Finland, the beginning of Winter War. So I do believe that we have this ex-smoker feeling that as a former heavy smokers who are far more sensitive to smell of cigarettes than those who have not experience with the smoking. This historical sensitivity acts as collective foresight, recognizing the danger long before the Western countries like France, like Spain, like Germany. And we're a small country, so we know how it is to live next to the big and dangerous neighbor. I do believe that we have this kind of same awareness, and this is what makes Czechs and Finns sharing the same legacy, not just the hockey or this marital status of Mika Häkkinen with his Czech wife. Okay, why it matters? When we talk about the narrative warfare, we have to talk about narrative security or narrative safety. And you see on the picture this very famous fairy tale, Polla Hilkka, is it? Is it? Okay, so Little Red Riding Hood. So we all know that this is a small, cute girl with a red hat going through the forest. And the villain is clear, it's a wolf, right? So imagine that somebody, and it's our shared identity. We all know this fairy tale and we know how it ends up, yeah? So imagine that some foreign country comes to your country and start to explain you that it's not what that your beliefs are wrong, that it was a different story. And the story is that a Little Red Riding Hood is a drug smuggler, is a dangerous person, and the victim here is a wolf. And imagine that country is flooding you with this kind of content. Not just this kind of content, but also video content. It's everywhere. It's in your reels, it's in your shorts, and in the news feed everywhere. You start to have this urge, oh my God, everything I believed in the past was wrong. Maybe the wolf was victim, and maybe you don't have to act. You just lose your trust into the news feeds and into your society. What I was taught for so many years, maybe it's a different story. Who should I believe, And it disrupts your trust. And this is how the propaganda works in my country. Russian propaganda works, and that we are starting to lose our trust towards the institutions because we're flooded by similar content. And it's important to say that this content doesn't have to be disinformation. And the critical thinking is not the only way to tackle it, because this is a subconscious thing. This is an emotional thing. We just see something disgusting, dangerous, and it goes to our deeper layer of the brain before the critical thinking even starts. Yeah, our deeper layers of the brain are triggered before we start to think if this is a false or true message towards us. So that's why it's important to understand, to kind of support the psychological intelligence of the society, not just critical thinking itself. So why it matters? Those adversaries weaponize narrative fracture as a hybrid war tactic, and the shared identity is a strategic asset. So the cognitive erosion, the campaign against the West, is a diffuse, coordinated assault of cognitive erosion and covert disruption. The goal is not to seize territory, but to fragment trust, fracture resilience, and corrode collective sense-making, right, as you see on a picture. So right now I'll show you the example from the Czech social media of Russian propaganda, how it works in real life. Here, right? So you Finns understand, because you have collective identity similar to Czech collective identity. So you understand, yeah? So I'll show to the online. Here, yeah, you see Noah's Ark. Yeah, cursor is here. So you see, you can recognize the Russian flag. If I would show it to some African nation, they wouldn't recognize the Russian flag. They don't have this common legacy as we do. So they wouldn't understand this message, but we do. This is Noah's Ark, and this is a Russian flag, and the narrative is clear. The Russia is saving us, right? The second picture, merge Green Deal as something Soviet. So Green Deal, European Union, brings some misery. For you Finns, you didn't experience collectivization, you didn't experience the communists. So for you, there is no emotional trigger. But for us, there is. Because there was a lot of poverty during the communism, and there was a big problem to agriculture. So when we see this kind of connection, Soviets with the Green Deal, we are emotionally triggered. We feel fear. The third one is obvious, is propaganda against the Ukraine. Fourth one, this one, it's also clear, it's propaganda against the European Union, same as here, when European Union is labeled as something dangerous, bringing death to, this is probably a French tractor driver, because it was narrative that the farmers in France are committing suicide due to Green Deal. Yeah, so it really, whoever read this propaganda article felt this kind of emotional fear of outrage, of something that labeling European Union as a super dangerous organization. So this is attack on our shared identity. We see clear threat, and we see answer to this threat. And this is this Russian flag helping us. So not just the Moscow, but the Moscow in cooperation with Belarus, with Minsk, strategy is to aim to degrade the West faster than Russia must reform itself. Yeah, the goal is epistemic disorder. Hybrid strategies seek to destabilize public perception and disrupt emotional coherence, aiming to fragment society, shared reality, and overwhelm it with contradictions and fatigue. We're just tired. When you see so much negative content, you're just tired. You don't want to act. You don't want to send money to Ukraine, to humanitarian aid. You don't want to hear about the stories of brave soldiers there. You're just exhausted. And this is the aim of it. Strategic aim is regime preservation and restoration of a privileged sphere of influence. I can tell you, we really feel it in Czech Republic because Prague is big Russian asset. A lot of Russians are having properties in Prague. So to keep the influence in Czech Republic is a strategic thing for Russians. One more story. For Czechs, as I told you, we share the legacy, and it's kind of negative feeling towards Russia. But it's important, do not apply collective blame on Russia. We also had a story of few brave people in the 68 standing in a red square, risking their lives with a transparent saying, "For your and ours freedom." We have a lot of Russian escaping Putin, Russia 2010. There were a lot of important opposition leaders living in Prague. For example, daughter of Boris Nemtsov, she is living right now currently in Prague. And those people, they have children. Those children are Russians. So imagine this massive hatred in Czech Republic towards Russia is really triggering those innocent. So we had in the past some suicides among the Russian children, especially after the beginning of invasion. They couldn't bear it anymore. They felt such a massive blame that they just committed suicide. And this is a dark side of combating, that even if the society is so polarized and the hatred towards aggressive nation is so big, it can really trigger those vulnerable individuals who maybe do not agree with Kremlin policies. So yeah. And success metric is not measured by the public victories, by delayed attribution. It's already happening in my country. Longer response times. Right now we are battling. How should we react? Yeah, what should we do? Should we introduce some new laws, or should we regulate? How should we regulate? And where is the ethical border? And imagine democracies. Democracies are the best, but they're late. They're always late. We're slow to bring the new laws. So this is a problem. Rising defending overheads and recurrent political paralysis. This is what's going on in my country. So yeah, it works. And this is one of the campaigns I caught in the spring. We call it cocaine noses. So if you remember, Emmanuel Macron was coming back from Kiev, and he was having a tissue next to him in a train, and they just got it on a picture, and the Russians started to claim that it was sachet with cocaine, not a tissue. And they just blurred the picture, so it's not clear that it's tissue. And I made it, as I told you, the aim is to disrupt your trust towards the European leadership. So this is one of the Russian campaigns to disrupt our trust towards European leadership. So they exaggerated the message. And of course, if it triggers your critical thinking, you see to yourself, oh, this is clear disinformation. But this triggers your inner layers of the brain. It gives you some emotion. What's the emotion on a picture? It's disgust. It's moral disgust. Yes, it's something unacceptable in our society to take drugs. So we feel this kind of moral disgust. This emotion is much quicker than critical thinking in our brain. It creates a physiological reaction. Yeah, we beg. We think this is no way. And it tackles our decision-making process in our brain. So it corrodes our trust, and it influences our decision processes. So how do I know this is a Russian influence operation? Like that. I track the content, where it originated. It was translated to so many European languages, but it originated in Russia. So that's how I know. It came from Russia. It had been translated to all the European languages, and it's been spread via different networks like Kontakte, Facebook, X, Telegram, etc., everywhere. The statistics. So this content showed in 123 tracked accounts. There had been probably much more. These are just the tracked accounts. But it created 57,000 interactions. It's quite a lot. So people were discussing. They've been morally disgusted by this content. So it created a reaction, and the reaction exaggerated the reach of the content. And this is a dangerous, that actually they're using the social networks to exaggerate, to spread the propaganda, just thankfully to algorithms of the social network. This is another example of algorithms helping Russia and its influence. This is a chart comparing reach of Kamala Harris before the American elections on Facebook, and Robert Fico, who is a Slovak, probably you know Mr. Fico, he's Prime Minister of Slovakia, backing Mr. Putin in his policies. So he is really a real threat to our Central European democracies and values. And when you compare the reach, there's something not really working, right? Because Mr. Fico is using Russian troll farms to amplify his reach of the content. So Slovakia is under strong influence of Russian propaganda, not just by Robert Fico, but by other PMs who are clearly elite captured by Russians, and they're working towards the Russia propaganda just to spread the Russian worldview. Conceptual framework, there are 3 layers of disruption, at least those 3 layers we are right now experiencing in Czech Republic. So first one, the most visual one, the one we see every day, is this cognitive infiltration. So the focus is the systematic penetration of the informational ecosystem to erode trust in institutions, blur the truth, and trigger emotional fatigue. Tactics are saturating public discourse with suspicion and polarizing effect by repurposing existing tensions and anxieties. You'll see it with the Finnish example. Narratives exploit national grievances, alleged Russian victimhood, and the perceived decay of Western moral legitimacy. You saw it with the cocaine noses. Yeah, the West is spoiled. This is the clear message. The layer 2 is what's happening in Baltics, in Poland, in Czech Republic. So is decentralized recruitment of low-cost, responsible individuals, economic migrants, criminal elements, via encrypted channels to carry out tactical tasks like arsons. In Czech Republic, we experienced the arson committed by Colombian criminal. He was recruited in South America, came to Czech Republic to commit arson in our logistic knot. Right, he wanted to burn some buses in the main station. So this is exactly the layer 2. Layer 3, expanding scalable disruption. Chaining together minor events, micro operations to create cumulative degradation and strategic effect. In Czech Republic, fake tweets of top politicians. They just created a fake tweets. They started to spread it. The Medvedev responded very fast for that, and then before the state started to create some strategic communication, this micro event happened, and it started to spread this mistrust towards the institution and politicians. And then another one, and another one, and another one. And we just feel this information fatigue already, you know, because you don't know whom to trust. It's really exhausting. So effect is psychosocial exhaustion from repeated low-level threats. They are good in it, especially with the AI. They can create such a micro events very fast and very effective. They know the network already. They know how to translate, how to trigger. They know Czechs very well because they've been gathering data through all the COVID, so they know which groups are vulnerable, which groups have already problem with the trust because of the COVID pandemic, you know. There've been some mistrust towards the vaccination or face masks, so they already know who to tackle with the campaign. So there are again some examples. The comparisons, right? So in the first pictures, you see Prime Minister of Czech Republic, Petr Fiala, who is political scientist like me, so that's why he do not understand cognitive warfare as I did in the past as well. If you have a tunnel view only in your field, then it's hard to understand. With Volodymyr Zelensky, and you see it's grayish, blurred, look a little bit like Finland, and it seems that he's kicking into the flag, so it's kind of disgrace, you know, for Czechs to see something like that. The area is not very clean. It doesn't look that good. And in comparing to, wow, what a hero. What a beautiful wreath of flowers, so colorful, such a graceful moment right here. So it's comparing something with something and makes you that kind of feeling that Putin is a good guy and those guys, they're just clear disgrace. That's how your subconscious layers of the brain can react to such a picture. Similar here, yeah, you see clear threats, something we know from the history, Hitler. Czechs we know because we lost our land before we could actually fight back. and you see Zelensky. So again, for critical thinking, it's clear it's doesn't apply. It's not the same person. But for your unconscious layer of the decision making in your brain, it comes this threat together with a picture of Zelensky. So it tells you, okay, this is something you should be careful about, right? This leader can be similar to this leader. And this narrative is also clear. There is a dove bringing a key to enslave the West. Yeah, so again, dove is Russia. We can see the Russian flag. So it's clear Russian propaganda, all of those. Just messing up, hacking our brain in towards favoring Russia. And last one is clear again, is connecting Ukraine with the Nazi Germany. And in the text we see again this moral disgust, because it says about Zelensky's corruption. So he is rich. He got so many villas, yachts, and private jet for your money. Okay, so how it looked when we want to cluster those narratives we are having after COVID in Czech Republic supporting Russia. So it's quite clear. The first one to legitimizing Russian aggression on Ukraine. Yeah, so Russia is just defending itself. Yeah, it's NATO who is attacking, spreading, its influence. And we felt endangered in Russia. We had to attack Ukraine. So this is the narrative: self-defense against NATO. Delegitimizing Ukraine. So it's, of course, it's Nazi regime. The Russians are using this Nazi regime against every victim they've been attacking since Second World War. Yeah, so whoever is not with Russia is obviously Nazi regime. So right now, even our government is Nazi government because we are against Russia. And they keep telling us that they are just fake refugees because it's safe in Ukraine and they're just using our money to enrich themselves. So we should hate Ukrainian refugees and support Russia to bomb Ukraine and keep bombing Ukraine. It's merged with anti-government, anti-EU, right? Czech government in the past was supporting broadly Ukraine. We had some ammunition initiatives. We've been gathering ammunition. We've been fundraising for ammunition. The Czechs are good in fundraising. We're actually buying arms. We don't buy humanitarian aid. We like to buy them proper weapons, So usually they've been labeling Czechs as the aggressors because we've been buying arms for Ukraine. So they're labeling Czech pro-Western government as the puppets of the West, or attacking democratic institutions like Czech government, European Union, NATO, connecting it with the Nazi regime, or like puppeting for Ukraine and believing that this government, Ukrainian government, is not corrupted. Of course, as I told you, usually the groups that had been created, like disinformation groups that had been created during the COVID, they still work very well as a network to spread hatred towards the Ukraine. So they merge it together with this kind of COVID narrative, reusing COVID legacy, claiming vaccines are toxins, and they lied about the COVID to you. Right now they're lying about the war, so the reality is different. Don't trust mainstream media. Even though the Czech mainstream media are very high quality, but this mistrust spread via propaganda is lowering the trust towards the mainstream media. Attacking the institutions, claiming like Czech army will conscript your sons to war, they will send your sons to war in Ukraine, and they will die for corrupted regime, or the sanctions hurt only Czechs to erode trust and align with Kremlin aims. So, as I show you before, the attention economy on social media is a great battlefield. It's a new battlefield. Russia is great using Facebook to spread its propaganda, to use TikTok to spread its propaganda, and all the other channels that are not moderated at all, like Telegram, Yeah, Telegram. We also have a lot of disinformation websites that government is very reluctant to shut down because then it's scared that it will be attacked as a censor. So again, I told you this narrative is very powerful. We can shut those disinformation websites down because they are translating the sanctioned sources like Russia Today, but we're quite scared to do it because we experienced the communism and censorship, and we don't want to do it again to be labeled as a censors. And that's a problem. Cognitive warfare targets the way we think, leveraging platform incentives. Digital platforms are designed to maximal engagement, not truth. So if I write on my Facebook that Earth is round, there will be no reactions because it's obvious, it's truth, it's boring. If I'll write the Earth is flat, then of course it will create a lot of negative comments because people will think I went crazy, but they will want to comment. Some people will agree with me, but just this kind of engagement will say algorithm, oh, this is interesting. She wrote something interesting. A lot of people are responding, are creating interaction. So let's send it further. And the algorithm itself is spreading lie much or extreme content much faster than the truth. It had been published that on X that the disinformation is spread 7 times faster than the truth. So this is a problem of nowadays. And of course, algorithmic biases, we live in echo chambers. Algorithms favor emotional, polarizing, and negative content. Cognitive warfare attacks the methods of thinking, not the individual opinion, right? So it attacks all the layers of the brain we are using, especially those that are giving us priority in our decision making. So another emotional arsenal are those 3 dominant emotions. The emotions, they're supposed to protect us, right? So the 3 dominant emotions that are supposed to protect us as a Homo sapiens are disgust, fear, and outrage. Disgust is supposed to protect us from things we don't see, like viruses, like bacteria, like bodily fluids. So when we see something that disgusts us, it's supposed to protect us from disease. Yeah, we have physiological reaction towards something which is disgusting. Yeah, we back. So if we see visual content like you see right now, and I told you'll see disgusting things, then of course you're trying to go back. You know, you're trying to escape that. It makes you disgusted. Same with the fear and outrage. You see this kind of dominant thing, the dominant emotion, and it puts your body into the alert mode. Your hormones rise. There is, for our brain, for our evolution, evolution didn't think that we will have online content. So for our brain, it's pretty much the same. The danger online for our brain is the same as the danger offline. There's no difference for our brain because evolution didn't think that there will be Facebook in the future when they developed a Homo sapiens neocortex. So what we see here, it's Ukraine today. We see rotten teeth. Rotten teeth is something what makes us feel kind of disgusted because it says, oh, this person is sick. This person spreads some infection. It should be danger for me. But here it's also connected with the moral disgust. Yeah. So this alcoholic people, here's clearly alcoholic and sick and Nazis. So it combines all kind of disgust. Here, yeah, corrupted regime, and here, extreme pain. So it triggers my outrage. I feel outrage here. Yeah, these people have money, and these people are fighting, are dying for these people. Yeah, it creates kind of moral disgust and outrage. I don't agree with this. This is against society. This is not fair. This narrative or this picture, it's spread by Czech neo-Nazi group. And it's funny that this Czech neo-Nazi group spreads this kind of content on a network of Kontakte, which is a Russian network. Yeah, so imagine Czech Nazis are organizing themselves on a Russian network, spreading a disgust about LGBT community. Here, another comparisons. This is a picture. The text says this is a picture from Russia. Cute, pregnant mommy, and cute daddy is listening to heartbeat, and something very disgusting. Yeah, Western art, disgusting. Somebody's peeing, body fluids. Yeah, it makes me kind of. I'm liberal, so it doesn't trigger me, but it may trigger some conservative people. And here, this is the official political campaign of our extreme right. So this was official billboard jumping on you everywhere you've been driving. So they say, it's upon your decision what you will eat. Stop EU regulations. Yeah? So it says the European Union will force you to eat worms because insect protein will be mixed into your food. This is disinformation that has been misused in order to campaign, to create this kind of disgust towards the EU. Yeah, so they merged this dominant emotion with political campaign, and they misused evolution against our European values. Yeah, but this is still not enough. I want to show you some short videos we are having. They should also create disgust, fear, and outrage. So the first one, he's saying, give me, right? Begging for money. In London, Paris, everywhere. Comparing to this should trigger incels, right? Young male. Wow, what a hero. This is a troll profile, yeah? I'm not exposing any individual spreading Russian propaganda. This is a fake profile. And last one. We have music for it. Yeah, the statues fighting for Russia. So you can see that this is clear Russian propaganda, the Russian statues from Moscow and St. Petersburg. So there is a lot of it. We've been celebrating, Czech Republic has some vulnerabilities, as I said, the shared identity. So one of our shared identity is Velvet Revolution, and a students' protest. The International Student Day is after the after the Nazi attack on Czech students, 1939, and Velvet Revolution occurred again in this anniversary of the Nazi killing Czech students, again the 17th November. So this AI created video of the 17th November occurred on network and should spread this outrage about the current situation in Czech Republic. It's very emotional, even though it's all AI created. Yeah, so you see a lot of fire, a lot of outrage, muscles. Yeah, so the wording is like, well, do not let them steal our country. It's again against the Ukraine, supports Ukraine. It's very nationalistic, it's very outrageous, it's very dangerous. This one is addressing Czech president who is pro-Ukrainian to get out of our country and move to Ukraine. Yeah, so he's screaming, we don't want you here anymore, just get out. It's, again, very emotional and triggers younger generation who don't develop properly prefrontal cortex of the brain, so they don't know how to regulate emotion that well, so they are triggered much more with such a content than us boomers are. Okay, so let's switch to Finland. Is Finland center of attention? Yesterday when we had a conversation here, I heard a claim, yeah, Finland, we are middle of nowhere. Well, it's not true in information space in Czech Republic. We have quite a lot of Finland in Czech Republic. So I've translated some of the claims I just found recently. So one, I just took piece of it and translated to English. Just this week, Poland, Romania and Greece are refused to send their troops to Ukraine. Even in the event of long-term peace, furthermore, Finland, whose President Alexander Stubb is actively engaged in the coalition of the willing, and even visiting the White House with a delegation, has started to doubt the purpose of sending its soldiers to support the Kiev regime. Right? So the message is clearly twisted. So this text is a potent example of how adversary narratives are disseminating to achieve strategic objectives by exploiting perceived Western fragmentation and fatigue. The technique used is cognitive infiltration designed to erode cohesion and trust. Yeah, okay, so if the politician, if the president of Finland is saying, no, I don't know what to do, then if he doesn't know, then I should know. Yeah, we shouldn't do anything. We shouldn't support Ukraine. Yeah, the message is clear. Again, where it originated. Once I see I can't read it because I don't read Azbuka, then I know it comes from Russia. No, if we would analyze this kind of Telegram network, we would see that these kind of networks are spreading disinformation into the different channels in Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, Czech Republic, Germany, even Italy and France. The network is quite coherent. So again, just this particular message I found 12 times in my tracked accounts, but it created interactions of 4,000. So people are interested. They are commenting about this kind of twisted message. A different one. This is historical revisionism. So again, we see some message originated in Russian Azbuka here, and it just had been translated and spread and interpreted different ways in different networks like Telegram, like Facebook, like Kontakte. Yeah, we see here Kontakte. Yeah, I would definitely find some more Facebook and X for the message as well. What does it say? English translation of the message. Finland won the war against the USSR, declared the Finnish president. We still feel that we won because we defended our independence, says Alexander Stubb for The Economist magazine. According to the politician, Ukraine is now in a better position than Finland was, as it has allied and support from outside. Based on the 1944 treaty with the USSR, Finland lost about 10% of its territory. So, what does it say? The original statement by Finnish President Alexander Stubb is a powerful example of strategic communication rooted in historical memory. When framed by pro-Kremlin and anti-Western channels, which is implied by the pairing with the Russian-Ukrainian flags and the focus on territorial loss. The goal shifts to neutralizing the pro-Ukrainian narrative by injecting ambiguity. The strategy normalizing loss and managing expectations, reflexive control. Yeah, Finland lost, so let's Ukraine to lose its territory as well. It's fine. Why not? Even though Finland lost its territory, it claims it was a clear win of the independence. Yeah, so narrative is primarily as an act of a reflexive control, manipulating and adversary decisions by preconditioning their perceptions that aims to lower the West and Ukrainian expectations for definitive victory. And the last slide before discussion is the AI factor. I showed you a lot of AI content. For our brain, again, for critical thinking, yeah, it's fine, we see it's AI. But for our subconscious decision making, does our brain know? Does our subconscious layer of the brain give us alert, don't watch this, do not feel that emotions when you see that? Not really. So artificial intelligence has transformed disinformation from artisanal work to an automated processes. They know the target groups, they know the triggers, and they understand how to do it really quickly, kind of corrode the trust. Content industrialization, AI is used for high velocity creation of deepfake videos, clone voices, and synthetic images. Before the election, we had Czech-speaking Putin talking to our first-time voters, telling, don't trust your government, I'll tell you the truth. Yeah, so it's quite dangerous when you see Czech-speaking Putin being kind of, macho style, telling you don't trust them, they just try to use you. Automation pipeline, AI agents and scripts create, translate, schedule, and A/B test thousands of assets, tuning messages to the most anger-eliciting variants. Even in Czech Republic, we know that they're very highly operated bots that are just aimed to spread the hatred, the hate speech. So they're just creating the comments that are supposed to heat up discussion. They don't share pro-Kremlin propaganda. They're just to spread the hate speech and to polarize the society. And these bots are dangerous. They don't use any circadial rhythm. They just posting 24/7, every minute something into some posts just to exaggerate the message and make us all feel that we are living in a horrible country when there should be no trust towards the institutions. Model poisoning, adversaries saturate the open web and auxiliary knowledge base with a pseudo-journalistic content so that less guarded AI models repeat planted falsehoods like large language grooming. There is a very famous Pravda network. I showed my colleagues yesterday how it's tailored to spread Russian propaganda to large language models and how it's poisoning the answers of, let's say, GPT, for example. And synchronization, AI-enabled manipulation is now synchronized with physical and cyber events, drone inclusion, sabotage scares to blur situational awareness and keep institutions reactive. And that's a massive problem, especially what we experience in Czech Republic right now, because we are flooded with Russian propaganda. And some of the AI examples, yeah, so you see pro-Russian propaganda, the videos. We call it honey trapping. Attractive Russian girl riding, of course, bear, being attracting, keeping a male attention. And of course, the other examples of pictures that are supposed to tell us the different story, different narrative. And that would be it from my side. So right now it's your time maybe for questions or comments.
So please raise your hand
or
if you
emotions.
have any questions.
Thank you for the very thought-provoking presentation. My question is about limiting exposure to these content that provoke these strong emotions and sort of trick us in various different ways. To me, it seems that this is a wicked problem since these platforms, as you said, are unwilling to tackle issues, to moderate, because they fear the loss of revenue, and people are hooked on these platforms. They use them for, they use them way too much, quite frankly. So do you see any way of sort of limiting exposure to these contents, either through regulation or, let's say, public service campaigns or some such?
Yeah, the situation is horrible, but still there are tactics we can use. So I'm sending love to Denmark, who forbid social networks for people under 15. I'm not sure. Under 16? Not sure. What a brilliant move. It was definitely politically unpopular, I can tell you. Australia did the same. Brilliant idea. That would prevent so much mental health issues among young people. Yeah, it's not fun to watch this if you're a young person. You have such an uncertainty of the future. You feel anxiety, horrible anxiety. And of course, if you don't have stable values, then you're tricked by the propaganda, and you kind of feel that actually Putin is your future hero, right? So this is no good. So that would be probably something that wouldn't be popular, but would help a lot. First thing. Second thing, I like the Finnish approach that you have this national broadcasting agency, so you don't have that much paywall for the good information. In Czech Republic, this is a problem. So we have a lot of junk information, having them for free. So uneducated people are consuming that, and they're getting radicalized. And then we have good quality content that you have to pay for. Yeah, it has the paywalls, and you have to pay for subscriptions. So more educated, they don't really need this kind of pre-bunking. They're consuming good content, and uneducated people who are poorer, they consumed junk information. This is also the problem. Then, of course, we have vulnerable groups like young generation, elders, like lone seniors. They're sitting back at home, they're just, consuming the online content. The online content doesn't have to be good. And in Czech Republic, the resentiment works. So, we had such a good time during the communism because we didn't have cookie policies on internet. And when you talk to others, it was like, yeah, there was no internet during the communism. So of course there was no cookie policy. I know it seems too complicated right now, but your resentment towards those old times when you've been young and attractive and no health issues is kind of false. Yeah, it's difficult to tackle in Czech Republic. And then of course, the places like the peripheries, like Sudetenland, where the people have this kind of distrust because a lot of companies after the Velvet Revolution bankrupted. There is no really good job options, and those areas are quite poor. So these people are triggered, and the question is like what to do with these areas and how to support them. So definitely. When I talk to libraries or to companies, I said, please give them subscription for good news. That's what you have for free in Finland, and this is amazing. And at the third very important thing for intelligence, for state institutions to combat the good, holistic, fresh data. If we don't have data, good data scientists who are showing us like how much of the disinformation influence is coming from Russia, if they don't feel this kind of heaviness of the situation, they don't act, they don't create a proper strategic communication. So the data is alpha omega of everything. Right now we have a new disinformation agency for disinformation, European Union Agency for Disinformation. I forgot the proper name, sorry. But they told me, like, how do I see this institution? Like, will it succeed? Will it not succeed? It will succeed if it will have good data. And good data are also based on a willingness of the platforms to share the data. And the platforms like Facebook and TikTok are not really willing to share the data. They give you some backdoor to some of the content, but majority of false or problematic content is on a closed groups. You can't reach this content. Or this content is in the Reels and Shorts. You can't reach this content. You can evaluate this content, how dangerous it is. And of course, we really don't have methodology we may have methodology, but it would need a lot of computing capacity to actually evaluate this kind of videos. Yeah, and if I give this video to like all auditoriala, so do you think it's dangerous? You'll probably say, oh no, it's funny. Because you use your critical thinking. You estimate this video from your perspective, with your experience and your age, and you see, no, this is just, it's obvious it's propaganda. But does 18-year-old boy from the periphery see the same thing as you do? Yeah, we are biased in our society and in a security sphere. So it's hard to evaluate this video. You have to use a lot of analysts to look at the content. If you force analysts to evaluate the content, then you're in this ethical problem, because you know this content is harmful. It creates the PTSD. If you watch too much of it, you get PTSD. So you shouldn't force the analysts to watch it, because you know you harm them. Yeah, best of us are harmed because they're trying to protect the society. So it's really problematic. So yes, we have the tools. It would be great to have such a law that would make social media platforms not harmful. So to regulate the algorithms so it's not attention-driven economy. And that would be probably impossible. But we should definitely try. We should try as much as possible, create the tools that are helping us evaluate the situation, give us situation awareness, have a good fresh data, and act as fast as possible.
I would like to ask a question myself. You talked in this presentation about Russia in depth. One point of view in Finland, what about China? What about Chinese networks?
Yeah. I told you today that for me it's family issue, right? So my sister married a Chinese. And right now she's spreading Chinese kind of, shall I call it propaganda? I should. So the Chinese are good in long-term soft influence. They're different, they have different tactics, they never use negative emotions, they rather build kind of blurring tactics. But we see some merge tactics. So for example, when Putin met the Chinese leadership in March 2024, we saw the merge efforts. We saw the big boost for traffic on Czech disinformation website from China. So probably they shared some tactics together. Like, even though you think that there's not enough of Chinese influence in Czech Republic, there is. We, us as a Academy of Sciences, we launched this massive research project about, like, actually examining the influence of technologies on society. And suddenly we had a young Chinese student who wanted to help us with data, check data from TikTok, and she would research that from China and give us the data. So that was weird. And the funny thing about it was that to majority of my colleagues, it was not suspicious. So we don't even have this kind of awareness. We had Confucius Institute in Czech Republic who was closely cooperating with Czech institutions and kind of sharing know-how, not really giving know-how, but rather kind of learning the Czech know-how, you know. So they're good in kind of this soft power, and it's hard to catch the Chinese agent because they kind of all of them, all the Chinese individuals, they're gathering data from the country and they're selling, so they more have this kind of big data collecting strategy rather than all this kind of Russian strategies we are seeing.
Thank you. I think we are running out of time, so I would like to thank you and give a round of applause to Eva.
Thank you.